Hey, you, WV5853, thanks for the video idea. You're a good egg. From the genius mind who brought you Guts vs Termina and which JoJo would win in a fist fight, I'm bringing you something all new today, folks. Something you've never seen before. My name is Illogy Frankenstein Pillagy, and today I'm doing mad science. I'm going to combine two of my favourite fictions and create a clusterfuck of an alternate reality, in which the Steel Ball Run racers are dropped headfirst into the dungeons of fear and hunger, and the dungeon delvers are dropped headfirst into the Steel Ball Run race. This video contains spoilers for Steel Ball Run and Fear and Hunger. So, both of these fictions contain quite a large cast of characters. Fear and Hunger has 4 playable characters, and the Steel Ball Run has... fuck me, that's a lot higher than I can count. At least 2. So in the interest of time, we're going to take 4 characters from each and put them in the opposite universe. The Steel Ball Run contestants that are getting swapped are Johnny Joestar, Gyro Zappelli, Diego Brando, and Hot Pants, whose last name I don't know. This is the big 4 of Steel Ball Run, I think. Whenever I think of JoJo Part 7, these gophers come to mind. Valentine too, of course, but Valentine is way too OP. He'd wipe the Fear and Hunger verse in a single day, so he's banned. He can go on a playdate with Pocket Cat if he wants. I'm sure those two have a lot in common. On our Fear and Hunger team we have Enki, Darcy, Kahara, and Ragnvalder. Those are all the playable characters, so I hope they can give us a good show. On to the races! Let's start by tackling the Fear and Hunger contestants that have been dropped into the Steel Ball Run. Now, each character in Fear and Hunger has a unique motivation for delving into the dungeons. Darcy is there to rescue her crush, Kahara is there for money so he can give his family a better life, Ragnvalder is there to kill a twink, and Enki is there because he's an odd little emo boy with strange little interests. But, you know, these motivations are tied to the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, not the Steel Ball Run. Well, with the power of an ass pool, let's assume that these characters' wishes can be fulfilled if they win the race. If Ragnvalder wins the Steel Ball Run, he can kill the twink. If Kahara wins, he gets all the money he needs. Same rules apply to the other two. Make sense? Great, let's get into the fun stuff. The first part of the race is a short but intense stamina match to gauge the racers' skills before they go off on their own. But before that, what are the chances that these people can actually ride horses? I mean, I'm almost certain Ragnvalder and Darcy can, considering Darcy is a knight and Ragnvalder is a hunter. Kahara? I mean, Kahara has the Endless Soul, which relates to freedom and creativity. Plus, he was a mercenary for a while, so I'm almost certain he can figure his way around a horse. Enki, though? Well, I think Enki is the poorest rider out of the 4, given that he's a frail little guy who prefers curling up with a good book to anything active. Though, I'm sure if his life was on the line, he could stumble his skinny arse into a saddle. So, about the first leg of the race. Who would win? Well, Ragnvalder and Darcy have the most experience, so I'm batting for those two. But could they beat other racers like Poco Loco, Sandman, and Avdol? I mean, maybe? Avdol is riding a damn camel for one, so any horse with a little bit of speed is gonna outrun him. Poco Loco has the power of limitless luck on his side, so I don't think they're beating him, even with his late start. Sandman is a maybe though. It depends if our racers come out of the gate using 100% of their energy. Remember, you don't need to get first in every stage to win the Steel Ball Run, you just need to cross the continent first. Ragnvalder and Darcy could always just choose to take it slow and conserve their horse's energy. It's not a bad strategy. Either way, this first stage is a breeze for all 4 of our racers. I'd guess, if going at top speed, Rag and Darcy could come second and third, first being Poco Loco of course, with Kahara placing between 10th and 20th, and Enki placing somewhere after 30th. From here on though, the race slows down drastically. This is the bit where participants need to plan for a long journey, how they'll conserve resources, their horse's stamina, and how they'll approach terrain. This is where Ragnvalder has the biggest advantage. He's an outlander, after all. He lived in a rural village, hunting animals and foraging plants. He knows his way around nature more than any of the other racers. He'll know the best way to approach different landscapes and weather conditions. However, there's one thing that's holding him back. His weight. Ragnvalder isn't a small guy. Far from it, in fact. Aside from my wife, the Crow Mauler, Ragnvalder is the most built character in Fear and Hunger. Now, if you've ever seen a professional jockey before, you'll know they tend to be quite small. This is because horses, naturally, have an easier time carrying a rider that weighs less. So, while Ragnar might be the most experienced in this leg of the race, he's going to have to take frequent breaks to let his horse rest, so it's not very likely that Ragnar is going to come out on top here. The person most likely to win this leg of the race is between Darcy and Kahara. Kahara is a crafty sort who's good at making use of his surroundings. Considering he used to run with various mercenary bands, Kahara is likely very experienced in travelling across great distances in a short amount of time. There's even a line of dialogue about this, where he states he's always thought a fresh start was easy if you run away to another point on the planet. This makes me think Kahara would actually perform quite well in this leg of the race, possibly even beating out Darcy and Ragnar. And if you're wondering where Enki is, he's so far behind it isn't worth mentioning. And he's not gaining any favour in this leg of the race either. Enki is a frail guy who's not very healthy or vigorous. His main method of attack in game is using minions and spells. There's a pretty high chance Enki croaks before this race is finished. It's not crazy to assume he'll just kick the bucket under the harsh weather conditions. Like, travelling through the desert when your body has less moisture than the moon's surface probably isn't a good idea. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say Enki doesn't perish crossing the desert. The final ranking for this stage of the race is Kahara in first, Darcy in second, Ragnar around 5th, and Enki trailing behind in the early hundreds. But there's one more glaring detail I'm forgetting, haven't I? Yup, stand users. This race is filled with them, or is it? Well, you see, it only appears that way because stand users in the JoJo universe are drawn to one another. For the average Joe, pun intended, the Steel Ball Run race is literally just a horse race. Out of the thousands competing, it's going to be a very small chance that they encounter one of the stand users. And last time I checked, our Fear and Hunger lot don't have stands. That's a video for another time. Out of our 4 racers, only one of them is likely to encounter stand users, and that's Enki. Okay, let me tell you why I think Enki is most likely to encounter stand users. Enki is interested in the occult and forbidden knowledge. The Steel Ball Run is chock full of forbidden topics, first on that list being the Holy Corpse. I'm willing to bet Enki is going to catch wind of the Holy Corpse and start attempting to find all the pieces. Hell, he'll be so far behind the frontrunners at this point he might even stop trying to win the race entirely and focus on the corpse solely. But if you've read JoJo, you'll know the Holy Corpse is an item in high demand. Many heavy hitters are after the corpse and won't give it up for free. So, could Enki fight off the stand users and claim the corpse for himself? No. Not in a million years. Even if Enki manages to weasel his way past Axl Rowe and Ringo Road again, he's never getting past Valentine. So yeah, if Enki was in Steel Ball Run, he'd probably go looking for the Holy Corpse and end up dead in Nebraska. The rest of the race should be pretty uneventful. It's just a question of whose skills, experiences and wits can carry them fastest across the continent. Ragnar would have the best mapping skills and devise the shortest route, but he'd be stopping often for breaks because his fat ass keeps weighing down his horse. Darcy would have the most consistent path with her experience in the army, and Kahara would be the fastest, being the lightest out of the 4, but his lack of riding experience would slow him down. So who actually reaches New York and wins the race? Well, I don't know. This could go to anyone. If I had to choose, I'm least confident in Darcy. Darcy is a skilled knight, but was raised by a noble family and grew up never needing to sleep outside or fend for himself. That background isn't doing her any favours while she's spending many nights sleeping under the stars. After that, I'd put Kahara. Kahara has the best speed out of the 3 but the least experience. When you're racing across harsh terrain like an entire continent, experience goes a long way. That leaves Ragnar. With his outdoor experience, mapping skills and survival knowledge, I think Rag has the best chance of winning this race. But where would he place? Would he come in first, beating out Poco Loco and the others? Probably not. But, you know, if you want to believe that, go right ahead. Ragnar takes first, maybe second, in the Steel Ball Run, Kahara comes around 3rd, and Darcy places somewhere around 5th, and Enki is dead back somewhere in Wisconsin. Of course, that's just my take on it. I could be completely wrong. This is basically just a fan fiction, so if you have your own ideas, leave them in the comments and I'll have a good time reading them. Now, we're on to something equally as interesting. Could the Steel Ball Run racers survive the dungeons of fear and hunger? On our dungeon delving team, we got Johnny Joestar, Gyro Zappelli, Diego Brando, and Hot Pants. Now, I'm sure you're realizing that most of these characters are stand users, right? Well, yes. Do their stands work in the Fear and Hunger universe though? Come on. Look at the shit that takes place in this dungeon and tell me stands seem far-fetched. Fuck, I'm pretty sure there's an enemy in the dungeon that's already a stand user. Yep, stands are allowed, no bother. However, in the interest of the dungeon not getting completely fucking mauled by the powerhouse that is Tusk Act 4, we're gonna set some limits. Johnny only has access to Tusk Act 1. This allows him to spin his fingernails and shoot them like bullets. The nails grow back after being shot, but not instantly. There's a limit of 10 shots before Johnny needs to recover. Diego has the stand Scary Monsters, which lets him turn living beings, himself included, into dinosaurs. Yes, dinosaurs. I know he has another stand as well, but I'm not touching that thing with a 7-foot pole. That second stand couldn't exist without Valentine anyway, and Valentine isn't here. Hot Pants has the stand Cream Starter, which acts like a tub of shaving foam, but for human flesh. Just go with it. And last but not least, we have Gyro's Balls. No, this is again getting to the point of being too overpowered. See, this is Ball Breaker, and this is a stand that can use infinite energy. No matter how you slice it, infinite energy tears apart the dungeons. So, he can still use spin, just not in its truest form. I'm not the only one seeing a problem here, right? The Dungeons of Fear and Hunger can technically be bested by your downstairs neighbour Joe if he's feeling particularly determined, and here we have borderline superhumans coming into the mix ready to take a stand. I don't think we should be asking if these four can survive the dungeons. I think we should instead be asking if the dungeons can survive these four. By all rhyme and reason, they should steamroll this place. But hold on. What if they went in one at a time instead of all at once? Hell, even if they all went in together, there's no promise they'd stay together. Buckman's group came to the dungeons after a lot of preparation and things still went tits up for them. The dungeons have a way of confusing the people who enter. It doesn't stay the same for the player either. Sometimes the layout will change at the start of a playthrough. It's like a labyrinth, and that's its greatest strength. The dungeons offer more than just a few strong foes. They prey on your mind as well, whittling down your sanity with every moment you spend in the darkness. All things considered, sure, there aren't many dungeon enemies that could stand toe-to-toe with our stand users. The new gods and maybe a few unique enemies, but that doesn't really matter. After all, would these people even be able to reach Mahabre before they lose their minds? Out of the four Steel Ball runners, I think the most likely to survive is Diego Brando. Diego is a very crafty guy, his morals are fairly loose, and he has a staggering determination when he sets his mind to something. He's willing to do almost anything to get what he wants, and he's no stranger to cleverly leveraging the scales in his favour. This kind of thinking is exactly the sort that prevails in the Dungeons of Fear and Hunger. It's not a place for soft-hearted people. Sad as it is, the worst people are the ones who do best in the dungeons. Prime example is Lagarde, who uses the dungeons to become a new god at the expense of his former comrade. Diego and Lagarde share that trait of using people for their own gain. Lagarde uses Darcy for her loyalty, while Diego uses an old rich woman purely for her money and status. And this isn't even considering Diego's physical condition, which is obviously quite good. Just look at him, god damn! Top that off with a stand like Scary Monsters and you're onto a winner. The only thing that might trip Diego up is his pride or his ego. He's a bit of a loose cannon, a little bit short-tempered, kind of takes things very personally, and that's not a good thing when your life is constantly under siege. So long as he's careful, kind of measured, and not a complete fucking idiot, I think he can do this no bother. I think a close second to Diego is Johnny Joestar. Now this might be a hot take considering he doesn't have functioning legs. Going into the Dungeons of Fear and Hunger without the ability to run away is like entering an arm wrestling competition with a gorilla. But hear me out, in the second Fear and Hunger you can play as a paraplegic character, Olivia, who manages to conquer the festival even with her disability. Now, I know the dungeons are slightly different to the Festival of Termina, but the core concept remains the same. I think, despite Johnny's disability, he could perform quite well here. His nail bullets offer him a ranged advantage, which is effective against many of the dungeon enemies, and he has a similar way of thinking to Diego in that he can be very determined to the point of sacrificing his own morals. Again, this is a skill that's invaluable in the dungeons. Lastly, and I think this is quite important too, Johnny can be pretty pessimistic, which you might not see as a good thing, but I do. I mentioned this earlier, but the dungeon tries to drain your hope. The darkness eats away at you and you slowly begin to lose yourself. The worst thing you can do in a place like this is cling to hope that things will get better. They won't. The darkness will not get any lighter. Sorry to break it to you, but there's no unicorns and rainbows at the bottom of this hellscape. I think Johnny can skirt this mind trap by his way of nihilistic thinking. All that combined, I think he could pretty easily survive the dungeons of fear and hunger. Although he'd definitely come out traumatized, but you know, at least he'd be alive. Now, this is the point where I'd begin to question if these characters would survive. I have faith in Johnny and Diego. Gyro? Not as much. See, on paper, Gyro has everything one would need to survive the dungeons. He's quick-witted, determined, hungry for first place, and even has basic medical training. So why do I doubt him? Gyro is one of the more empathetic characters in Steel Ball Run. He's not a stranger to lethal tactics, sure, I mean, he made a guy pop his own dome before the race had even started, but Gyro has morals and abides by them strictly. He has a determination, but matches it with his character rather than letting it run wild. This is a trait the dungeons will abuse to no end. There are characters in the dungeons that really shouldn't be engaged with, like Trocher, Lagarde, that one fraud merchant. These characters use their words to lure you into a sense of security before taking advantage of you. Am I saying Gyro is stupid and will fall for this? No. But Gyro isn't the type to strike first, ask questions later. I think he could survive the dungeons if he just keeps his head down and beelines for the bottom, but I doubt that would be the case. I don't see Gyro leaving the little girl alone in the darkness of the dungeons. He's probably gonna try and save her, and you know, as kind as that is, it's not gonna do him any favours in terms of surviving. So in Gyro's case, I'd say it's a 50-50 on him surviving the ordeal. Out of the four, I think Hot Pants is the least likely to survive, and I don't think this is going to shock anyone. We just talked about the dangers of being an empathetic character and how the dungeons will weaponize that against you. Well, Hot Pants has her fair share of emotional baggage. She carries a large amount of guilt with her at all times, stemming from childhood where she sacrificed her brother's life so she could survive in his place. The guilt dictated how she lived from then on, with her becoming a nun and seeking out the holy corpse, both as a result of her guilty conscience. This guilt would massacre her in the dungeons. She wouldn't be able to live with herself if she added more guilt to her already fractured past. It's not far-fetched to assume she'd try and help Buckman's group, encountering enemies like Torture, Lord of the Flies, and the Gaunt Knight. Now that's all optional and has nothing to do with her main goal. It would only put her in harm's way. She'd probably also attempt to save the girl, but this would only slow her down, and now she has to worry about protecting two people instead of just one. Again, the dungeon favours the corrupt and morally vague. Good people with strict values are going to meet worse fates. If you don't believe me, just look at Kahara, the most selfless character out of the main four. He's just there so he can get enough money to buy his wife out of a life of prostitution. And do you want to know how his story ends? He brings the girl to the bottom of the dungeon, caring for her the entire time, only to die in a hole where no one will ever remember him. Yeah. I'm sorry to say, but I've got no faith in Hot Pants. I just don't think she's gonna survive. Not even 5 minutes. Okay, that was fun. I bet this is a crossover you never expected, huh? Well, again, thanks to this comment for the idea, because I never would have thought of this on my own. Thank you all for sitting and listening to me ramble. This was an interesting video. This was a fun one. I want to do more long form content. 10-minute videos are, sure, they're easier to make and easier to edit, but they just feel like throwaway videos and don't really have much meaning attached to them. Okay, I'm not saying this video has meaning either. It's a fucking crossover, but shut up, man. I'm having fun. Bye!